9 and noon on CNN.
Donald Trump is facing fresh fallout from his controversial remarks about Mexican immigrants. Protesters, and that includes politicians, demonstrated at the site where Trump is building a new hotel in Washington, D.C., and they blasted the candidate's description of some Mexicans as rapists and killers. They called for his name to be removed from the building. But Trump is not backing down, even as he faces pressure from within the Republican Party. Listen to what he told CNN's Anderson Cooper.
Illegal immigrants coming in are causing tremendous problems in terms of crime, in terms of murder, in terms of rape, in terms of lots of other things. Let me give you two studies.
CNN chief congressional correspondent Dana Bash has more on Trump's troubles. And Dana, give us a sense of what you're finding out from your sources about this call between Donald Trump and Republican Party Chairman Reince Priebus, because you talk to one side or the other side, and these are completely different stories that we're getting.
It does seem that way, Brianna. What I am told is that the Republican Party chair, Reince Priebus, was returning a call to Donald Trump yesterday afternoon. It wasn't a call that was unsolicited to chastise the billionaire. It was simply a call that he needed to return, and that it was a wide-ranging conversation. And at the end, I am told that Priebus said, basically, look, you know, I have spent a lot of time trying to help Republicans reach out to the Hispanic community, and he has. He spent a lot of time doing that, even did an autopsy at the Republican National Committee to try to figure out how to reach out to Hispanics. And I'm told that he basically made clear to Trump that he's concerned about his tone. But to be clear, my source never said that he chastised him, never said that that he really went after him in any way, shape, or form, but that he did make his concerns clear when it comes to his responsibility, he thinks, for the party.
And he took away from it that it was a congratulations. So certainly that wasn't the only thing they talked about, but it's interesting what they each may have zeroed in on. Donald Trump recently responded directly to CNN about your reporting. I want you to listen to this.
He did say, you know, if you could keep it down a little bit, but you can't change your personality, and I understand that. But it was really a nice call, a congratulatory call, and it was just a short call.
What do you think, Dana? Is it also a possibility that, you know, you sort of maybe want to be positive with someone to also deliver a message of constructive criticism?
Absolutely. A couple things. One is I'm here in Wisconsin. That is where Reince Priebus is from. And people here in the Midwest tend to speak in niceties. And people in New York don't. And I can say that as somebody who's from New Jersey, right across the river. So a Republican here I was talking to today said, you know, maybe if Trump just didn't understand the language that Priebus was speaking because he was maybe being too nice for Trump to get it. But clearly he wasn't harsh. And just the context of this is that, number one, Priebus and Trump have known each other for a while. Trump has been a donor. And also, Reince Priebus is the Republican Party chair, so he does have to walk a very fine line. He is neutral in this Republican primary race, so he really has to be careful in picking up the phone and calling any of the candidates saying, please do something differently, because that really isn't technically his role, although in this particular case, because he has been so forthright in trying to change the way Republicans are perceived in the Hispanic community, especially since the 2012 election when Mitt Romney only won 27% of that vote, this particular issue might be a little bit different for him.
Dana, stand by for us as we bring in CNN political reporter Sarah Murray, CNN political director David Chalian, and CNN senior digital correspondent Chris Moody, along with former special assistant to President George W. Bush, Rudy Fernandez. So, Rudy, it sounds like, I don't know, maybe it is a cultural difference, I don't know, but it sounds like maybe Reince Priebus didn't really get this point of toning it down across to Donald Trump. But do you think Republicans should be worried about Donald Trump?
Look, I know Chairman Priebus, and he's a nice Midwesterner. He's a gentleman. But make no mistake about it, I worked at the RNC. I was part of the Bush team in 2004 that helped President Bush get 44% of the vote. And I guarantee you that the RNC is concerned about the Hispanic vote, about being perceived as anti-immigrant. And they realize that to get anything less than 35% of the Hispanic vote in 2016 would be to deliver the keys to the White House to Hillary Clinton. So there's concern by Chairman Privas. There's concern by senior staff. And candidates who are serious candidates for the presidency, like Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio, are going to be quick to denounce the inflammatory and frankly, the statement by Donald Trump is something that appeals to the extremists and to bigots, the few bigots that we have left in the party, and there's no room for it. So that's why you saw Jeb Bush criticize so sharply the comments by Trump.
But you're saying that there are a few bigots who are attracted to this language that Donald Trump is using. But isn't it also, I wonder, looking at Republicans as they seem to try to navigate exactly how to handle this, they're also aware of the fact that maybe it isn't just a few. Maybe this is a chunk of the Republican base that is so important in this primary season.
Listen, there's a roadmap for how to win as a Republican candidate. And that roadmap, was highlighted by people like President Reagan. President Reagan was someone that always talked in terms of optimism and a positive vision for the country. He talked about a shining city, on a hill. He would be turning over in his grave, when he hears some people that claim to be conservatives defend Donald Trump. You can't appeal to hate. You can't appeal to people's fears. We got to be campaigning for the presidency to win the White House in 2016. From a place of having an optimistic vision for the country. And that's what you see Jeb Bush trying to do. There are others. Marco Rubio is a very positive candidate. I hope that Scott Walker rectifies some of his comments as it relates to immigration and paint a more positive tone, because that's what it'll take. If we're seen as anti-immigrant, if we're seen as grouping all Mexican Americans and Hispanics all in one bucket because of a few isolated incidents, unfortunate incidents, but isolated incidents, we're going to wish that we had the 27% that Romney received in 2012.
Wow. Chris, you hear what Rudy says right there, and I know you've done a lot of reporting on GOP outreach to the Latino community. This is very important to the party.
Oh, it absolutely is, and they've been putting the resources behind it for the past several years, proving that point. Not just within the Republican Party, who has recruited presidential candidates like Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, even Rick Perry, who are very good at talking to Latino voters, but also the outside groups, the Koch groups like LIBRE Initiative and also the Hispanic Leadership Fund have been doing this full time. And I talked to them this week, and they said that this is just killing them. They've worked so hard to try to convince Latinos to embrace free market ideas or the principles of the conservative ideology or Republican Party, and this just tears a lot of that down very quickly.
And we've seen, Sarah, in our interview on Tuesday, it gave Hillary Clinton this opening to lump all Republicans in with Donald Trump. This is, and then you saw Jeb Bush fire back right away, and they've been in this sort of back and forth. That tells you how big this is going to be in 2016.
Yeah, I think the reality is we're now seeing the incoming attacks from Democrats on this issue. We saw the Democratic National Committee put out their own video on this issue, doing the same thing, painting all Republicans as just sort of mini versions of Donald Trump when it comes to these kind of comments that a lot of people perceive as very hateful. And that is a huge risk to the Republican Party. If people who are thinking of voting for a Republican tune in now and this is what they think the Republican Party stands for, that turns those voters off immediately.
This is how you know that Reince Priebus and Hillary Clinton completely agree. Because Reince Priebus is making a phone call to Donald Trump and saying, hey, can we try to knock that off a little bit? I'm a little concerned. While Hillary Clinton is injecting it right into the conversation because it serves a dual purpose for her. She gets to expose what is an internal divide inside the Republican Party, especially during the nominating season. And she gets to excite support among the Obama coalition voters that she needs to desperately recreate. The folks that propelled Barack Obama to the White House in 2008, she needs those folks. She just tweeted in Spanish in the last hour, Brianna. Hillary Clinton tweeted saying, Donald Trump is not the only one with retrograde ideas about immigration. I don't know if my translation is exactly right.
She did it in English and she did it in Spanish.
Exactly. So
right?
She's clearly trying to make sure to continue to hang Donald Trump around the necks of the entire Republican field.
And Rudy, to be clear, do you see one of the vulnerabilities here for Republicans is that when you look at immigration, Donald Trump obviously has one view on one end of the spectrum, and you see Republicans along this spectrum, but they're not united. And so there is this division that can be exploited. Lindsey Graham is for a path to citizenship, but you see Jeb Bush, who is for some sort of recognized status, but not a path to citizenship.
listen, I spent 20 years fighting for Republican candidates and campaigning for Republican candidates. And polling and data in elections today is very important. There was a poll recently, I think it was released 2 weeks ago, by the Partnership for a New American Economy, a right-of-center group that supports comprehensive immigration reform. And that poll shows you that to follow the Trump line gains you maybe 1 out of 5 voters, Republican voters, in South Carolina and New Hampshire, and 1 out of 5 caucus goers in Iowa that are going to be Republicans. But it costs you twice as much come the general election. And that's, it's a losing game. If you try to build a winning coalition, as Trump is trying to do, by trying to win Iowa or win New Hampshire, I assume he's in it to win it, by appealing to that extreme right, you put yourself in a position where you're going to be toast in the general. And the reality is that there's a path. The good news is that while 1 out of 5 people agree with Trump in Iowa, that means that 4 out of 5 are reasonable people, reasonable Republicans on immigration, and are open to a Jeb Bush position on immigration that wants to increase border security, wants to deal with the undocumented here in a fair and responsible way, and wants to increase and modernize our legal immigration system. So that's good news, and you got to focus on those 4 out of 5 that agree with you, that will allow you to stake a position that's defendable come the general election.
Dana, Rudy talks about this difficulty of navigating the primary versus the general, and he says it's pretty clear what you have to do, but it doesn't seem that it's actually that clear to these candidates.
It doesn't seem that clear. Jeb Bush now famously said he was going to try to win the primary by winning the general, meaning, kind of appeal to the masses and not just the right, as traditionally you have seen, or at least the past couple of cycles, Republicans try to do at their peril. Donald Trump is doing the opposite. He is trying to appeal to who knows what the real percentage is, but the part of the Republican Party that really that this message resonates with, and it does exist. What I'm hearing from my Republican sources that are more in the, for lack of a better way to say it, the establishment, more with the Republican National Committee, is that there's some, and I'm talking about people who are from around the country, not in Washington, there is some concern that the more you kind of push Donald Trump and the more you kind of get into a public war with him, that at the end of the day, assuming he doesn't get the Republican nomination, he is such a wild card that he could go off and be the Ross Perot of 2016, that he could run on his own, which historically has meant taking votes from the Republican nominee and ultimately delivering the White House to the Democrat. There is already concern about that because it is so hard to navigate. Never mind the Republican electorate, but right now, Donald Trump.
Yeah, and Hillary Clinton remembers that all too well, doesn't she? All right, Dana, stand by with the rest of our panel. Up next, we will show you what's bringing former Presidents Bill Clinton and George W. Bush together tonight as President Bush faces some backlash for charging a group of veterans for a speech.
I'm hired by Pals Ability Community.